My wife won't stop sleep talking. Creepypasta. My wife and I moved into our new apartment just a few months ago. Before this, we lived in a large cottage overlooking a beautiful lake. It was my wife's dream home for the 3 years we lived there. We didn't want to leave, but it was a necessary step for us. You see, Jessica and I used to live down south. Everything was going well for a while, but my law firm decided to promote me out of the blue. It was unexpected, but I couldn't have been more grateful. Unfortunately, the job entailed transferring to another one of our many branch locations. The one in question was in New England. We spoke long and hard on the matter, but eventually Jess agreed to the move. It's important to note that the dollar doesn't stretch as far up north as it does down south. It's also harder to find employment. That's why we were downgrading our living space. Until Jess could find another job, we would have to suffer. At least, that's the way she looked at it. Tensions were high the first few weeks after the move. I could tell Jess was irritable. She missed our old house, our old friends, and working a steady job. She had nothing to do with all of her free time, so she was bored out of her skull. This led to many fights. For a while, it seemed like we would never settle in. About a month after the move, things started looking up. Jess found temporary work as a part-time editor at the local TV station. She loved the work and couldn't have been happier with her coworkers. I couldn't have been happier for her. Everything seemed to be fine for a while. Not perfect, but fine. This was when the sleep talking began. It was to be expected, and honestly, I'm surprised it didn't start up sooner. You see, my wife is a restless sleeper whenever there's a big change in her life, good or bad. It happened when we got married, when we moved into our first home, and when she had the miscarriage. I'll touch more on that later. Jess knows she sleep talks because I used to bring it up from time to time. I would laugh each morning, recalling the weird things she said the night before. This always made her uncomfortable. She seemed to be embarrassed by it. That's why, after her first night of sleep talking in our new apartment, I didn't say anything. The sleep talking went on for a couple of weeks. It was at this time that Jess's temp job at the TV station came to an end. Without a job to keep her mind off of things, her nightly outbursts became much worse. She began screaming at odd times during the night, in which I would be forced to calm her down. One night, her screams turned into tears. As she was crying, she said something I'll never forget. "I wish you were dead." I knew my wife was asleep, but as I sat there by her side, calming her the best I could, I felt the need to press the matter. "You wish who were dead, honey?" To my surprise, she responded, "You." This caught me off guard. It's a strange thing to want your husband dead, and even stranger while you're asleep. "Why?" I asked. "You're ruining my life." Those 4 words cut deep. Whether they were meant or merely the product of a tired mind, they were the kind of words that demanded self-reflection. I wondered for a moment if I truly was ruining her life, or at least if I were to blame for her night terrors. My wife remained silent for the rest of the night. I know this because I stayed up. Contemplation and worry kept me from a good night's rest. I didn't believe for a second that my wife really wanted me dead. But her late-night antics were certainly a cause for concern. Between the screaming episodes and the morbid dialogue, this was the worst her condition had ever been. The next morning, I came pretty damn close to telling her about what had happened, but I kept thinking about how she'd react and what she'd say. It was too much. I didn't want to burden her any more than I already had, especially after she'd just been laid off. I also didn't want to have another fight. In light of this, I kept my mouth shut. The following night, the screams were gone. This was a comfort, but a fleeting one. Out of the blue, just as I was about to shut my eyes and call it a night, the sleep-talking commenced once again. Sometimes I think about how I'd do it. I chalked this statement up to pure, dream-induced nonsense. But then she continued. While you're asleep in bed, I'll get up and go to the kitchen. I didn't know what she was talking about, but as she kept speaking, it dawned on me. There were some moments of inaudible gibberish, but from the bits and pieces that were fluent, I could paint a pretty good picture of what she was describing. Reach into, grab knife, over and over again, blood oozing off the bed. Can't ruin my life anymore. My wife was describing her plan to murder me. As deeply unsettling as this was, I couldn't help but chuckle to myself. It was just a dream, after all. Nothing more. I can't say I haven't done some weird things in my own dreams. Things I would never do in real life. Jess was mad at me over the move, and she was working out her frustrations while she slept. At least that's what I convinced myself. The sleep-talking continued for a few weeks. I hoped that Jess's midnight venting sessions were doing her some good, but without a degree in psychology, I couldn't be certain. All I could do was listen to her ramble about offing me each night and wait for her condition to run its course. The longest her sleep-talking had ever lasted was a month, so it was safe to say it would be over soon. A month passed, then 2. Jess didn't let up. Every night, it was the same routine. Either incoherent nonsense or babbling about how she'd like to hurt me. It was getting old, but one night changed everything. As my wife slept, she uttered some words that tore right through my heart. I lost my baby because of you. My emotions swirled about and formed a sour concoction that rested in the pit of my stomach. This time, I had to know what she meant. What do you mean, hun? There was a brief moment of silence, but eventually, Jess offered me an answer. There was some more gibberish mixed in, but she was able to get her point across. You made me want kids. You put life in me. Now I'm alone. This struck a nerve and caused a few tears to roll down my cheeks. It was my idea to have a kid. Jess never wanted children, but she made herself want them for me. That's why, after the miscarriage, I was surprised to find her absolutely devastated. I had no clue how much she'd warmed up to the idea of having a baby. My tears were interrupted by more sleep talking, of the worst variety. I will kill you. I promise. That was the last thing she said all night. It's been roughly a week since my wife made that promise. As disturbing as that threat was, I could have easily brushed it off with the rest, assuming it too was the product of stress and was nothing for me to worry about. Unfortunately, I can't stop worrying about it. Jess is scaring the crap out of me. I'm now taking short naps and sleeping with one eye open, and it's all because of one thing. Now, she's sleepwalking. Story 2. My wife has a removable face. Creepypasta. Samantha told me about it on our third date. We were watching a movie on her couch when I made my move to kiss her. She whipped her hand in front of my face and blocked me. "There's something you need to know," she said. I braced myself. Here it comes. I'm not ready for a relationship. Nothing to do with you, of course. I imagined her saying. It was the absolute last thing that I wanted to hear, because I was already crazy about her. "Okay," I said. "I have a removable face." "That's a new one." "You have a what now?" I was about to laugh, but she was wearing a deadly serious expression. "I have a removable face." Is that like a metaphor or something? No, my face is literally removable. Look closely. She lifted her chin and traced her jawline with a finger. You can see the seam. After admiring how beautiful her neck was for a dizzying moment, I leaned in for an inspection. It was very hard to see, but it did look like there was a slightly unnatural transition there, from her face to her throat. I grew dizzier as a dozen questions rushed into my brain. Don't bother asking why or how or anything like that, said Samantha. I can't tell you that. If that's going to be a problem, you should leave now. I'm letting you know this because I like you and I want to take the next step, but this is non-negotiable. Okay, I said, unsure of what was happening. Not a problem. So what? You have a removable face. Who cares? It looks good. There's something else. Once a day, usually in the evening, I have to remove the face and disinfect the inside of it. If I don't, it will rot. This takes about an hour, give or take, depending on how my day went. During this time, you must never, ever look at my real face. Never. Do you understand? Yeah. Yes. Don't look at your real face. Samantha stood up. Now, I'm going to go into the bathroom and clean my face. That will give you plenty of time to think about what I've told you. If you're here when I'm done, that's great. I would like that. But if you're gone, I'll understand. She turned and walked into her bedroom. I sat in stunned silence as I heard the bathroom door close. I gave the thing some serious thought. It was possible that it was a joke of some kind. It was possible that it was a delusion. Was it possible that it was true? Well, it was certainly possible to transform an actor's face with movie makeup. So I supposed it was possible that Samantha wore a removable face every day. Maybe she had had a horrible accident where her flesh had been mangled. Maybe her face had been melted by acid or burned by fire, or the skin shorn off by heavy machinery. If it had, I would never know, because she would never tell me, and I would never see it. I pictured a face of raw, naked muscle, rotting away. Could I kiss her, if that was what I was kissing? But wasn't that what we all were, under the skin? Just muscle and bone and blood and squishy organs. I paced around the living room, running my hand through my hair. I liked Samantha a lot. She was smart and funny and beautiful. But was that beauty real? Did it count? Did it matter if it was real or not? Was I being superficial, even worrying about it? When she came out of the bathroom, I was still there. I looked at her face. She smiled and I was in love. We dated. We moved in together. We decided to get married. For the most part, it was a completely normal relationship, typical of two young people in love, building a life together. During the day, it was easy to forget about the face altogether. It looked natural enough, and only in certain positions, in certain lights, was there ever any indication that it wasn't natural. But every night was the same. Samantha would close herself in the bathroom, sometimes for an hour, sometimes for 2, and clean the inside of her face. The curiosity never left me. I would sit there and wonder what was under that face. I came so close to barging in on her a few times, but I never did. I did occasionally ask her about it. About what, if anything, had happened. About how it was possible to make the removable face look so real. About what it really looked like underneath. I tried to coax her into showing me, assuring her that I loved her no matter what, and didn't give a damn what her real face looked like. I was just curious, that's all. She never showed me or told me the story behind it. She didn't get upset at me unless I was really badgering her. She'd just shrug and say, "You know you can't see it. You know I can't tell you about it." I never told anybody about Samantha's removable face. It's not that she asked me not to. I just didn't think it was anybody's business. Except once, I did tell somebody. It was during my bachelor's party. We had rented several cabins in Big Sur and spent the night drinking and packing our noses with powders that we shouldn't have been packing our noses with. Everyone else had passed out, and the sun was creeping up behind us. as I stood on the majestic cliffs with my friend Chris, looking down on the Pacific waves crashing against the rocks. Chris was my best friend, as close to a brother as I'd known. We'd grown up together and visited each other at college often and spent the summers together. After college, we moved to different cities, but we stayed in close contact. Standing there on the cliffs, I told Chris about Samantha's removable face. At first, he thought I was joking. Then he had 1,000 questions, most of which I couldn't answer. What's underneath? I don't know, man. I don't know. Doesn't that drive you crazy? Not knowing? I shrugged. Lots of stuff I don't know. Don't know how to do calculus, and I don't know what happens when we die. But dude, she's about to be your wife, and you don't even know what she looks like. I mean, I'd have to take a look. Like, you could set a camera up in the bathroom. That's where she does it, right? Set up a camera and have a look, and then you'll know. I sighed. Yeah, it drives me crazy. I've asked her 1,000,000 times, but she told me I could never look. Gotta respect that, man, even if I don't like it. That's love. Chris laughed. You telling me to respect a woman? Up is down now. Then we fell back into talking about old times as a new day dawned. Chris was in town for business last week and planned on spending the weekend at our house. The conversation at Big Sur had happened 4 years ago, and we hadn't spoken about Samantha's removable face since, despite keeping in close contact and seeing each other as often as 2 people transforming into adults in different parts of the country can. It happened on Saturday evening. We were lounging lazily in the backyard, deep into the beer, having just finished with some grilled steaks, when I got a text from work. God damn it, I groaned. I have to make a work call. Seriously? Said Samantha, raising an artificial eyebrow. On a Saturday night? My biggest client, baby. Sorry. It is what it is, I guess, said my wife. I'm going to head inside and get cleaned up. Chris, are you okay just hanging out for a bit? Chris smiled. I'll be fine. Got my beer, got some weeds to pull in your garden. God knows your lazy husband isn't going to do it. Those tomatoes are choking to death. It's a tragedy. I rolled my eyes and went into the side yard to make my call. 15 minutes into it, I heard the screams coming from inside. Both my best friend and my wife were wailing in terror. I dropped the phone and ran into the house and down the hall to our bedroom. Through the open door, I could see that the door to the master bathroom was also standing open. Don't come in, screamed Samantha. I don't have my face on. Call an ambulance. He looked. Oh, God, he looked. She sounded desperate and truly horrified. That made me desperate and horrified, and I wanted to rush into the bathroom, but I knew suddenly that that would be a mistake. I knew suddenly that Samantha didn't want me to look at her real face not out of a sense of vanity, but for my own safety. Chris staggered backward out of the bathroom. He was holding a straightened-out paperclip, which he had used to pick the privacy lock. Now he was stabbing it again and again into his eyes, shouting gibberish. He was clearly in the depths of madness, and it turned my stomach to see him mutilate himself. "Call a fricking ambulance!" my wife screamed. "Don't come in here!" He fricking looked. I turned and ran back to the yard, where my phone was lying in the newly mowed grass. My client was still on the line, alarmed, asking what was happening and what all the screaming was. I hung up on him and called 911. When the paramedics arrived, Chris was having a seizure in the hallway. Samantha was stroking his head, sobbing. Her face was on, but it had been done hastily, and everything looked a little off. My world has been dark this past week. My best friend is in a psychiatric hospital under suicide watch. He's completely blind and mostly catatonic, except when he slips into a violent, babbling mania. The doctors are optimistic that his state is temporary, but they don't know the truth about what caused it, because I told the paramedics that Chris had taken a large dose of psychedelic mushrooms and fallen into psychosis. I saw no good reason to tell the truth about what had happened. Who would believe that one look at my wife's real face would make somebody insane? At best, we would be the subjects of a long investigation. At worst, we would have to prove that what we were saying was true by showing somebody Samantha's face. Then the same thing would happen again. And what after that? I had no idea and no interest in finding out. For Samantha's part, I knew that she would never consent to show anybody her real face, no matter what the consequences of refusal were. I did get a follow-up call from the police, asking me to confirm my story. The hospital found no traces of psilocybin in Chris's blood, though that's not unheard of, since it has a short half-life. If they end up testing his hair, I will likely be in a lot of trouble. But that's truly the least of my concerns. Samantha is in a state of her own. She still cleans the inside of her face, though not as regularly. And when she puts it back on, it's always crooked now. It is beginning to smell a little bit. I've tried to assure her that it wasn't her fault. He knew, I said. I told him that nobody was ever allowed to look at it. He knew, and then he broke into the bathroom. "This is not on you, baby. Please. Talk to me." "Not on me? That one look at my freaking face makes people insane? Please. I just need some time alone. As for me, I am doing my best to hold it together." Do you know what's strange, though? Despite what happened to Chris, I still find myself curious about what my wife's real face looks like. More curious than ever, really. These two stories were very good. The first one was super sad. I would confront his wife about the situation, though. Maybe she wasn't really asleep. As for the second story, when your wife tells you she isn't human in one way or another, you keep it to yourself period.